two elements that took me by surprise. One was the way in which women who are labelled high risk are treated within the system, in our NHS system. And the second was my mental health rapidly went downhill. So I was probably only 6 or 7 weeks pregnant when I got into quite a bad depression, and I didn't actually get any help. I didn't ask for help. I didn't receive any help until I was about 23, 24 weeks pregnant. So for the first 5 months of pregnancy, it was really about survival. And it was really about trying to reconcile this much wanted, much longed for pregnancy with my brain essentially telling me that he didn't need me, I wouldn't be good for him, and that I should just deliver him and disappear.
Gabriella, a big welcome to you. Thank you for coming onto the podcast. I want to start off by asking you, when you found out you were pregnant, what were your expectations around pregnancy, birth, motherhood?
Wow. Firstly, thank you so much for having me. It's amazing to see you again. I think when I first found out I was pregnant, my expectations of pregnancy were I had a vision. I thought I was going to be in like dungarees, barefoot, Earth Mother, birthing from home, all that jazz. And very quickly, I'd say, I started developing like a real fear of actually giving birth. So I kind of went from this, it's going to be so like spiritual and so great, to being like, I think I probably should just have an elective C-section. Like this isn't something I want to look forward to for 9 months. So it's a bit of a game of two halves at the beginning.
And then how did the pregnancy play out? Talk us through that.
My pregnancy, and I'm not sure that we've talked about this before, my pregnancy was pretty terrible. There were kind of two main things, I should say. Health-wise, physical health-wise, everything was good, everything was straightforward. But there were kind of two elements that took me by surprise. One was the way in which women who are labelled high risk are treated within the system, in our NHS system. And the second was my mental health rapidly went downhill. So I was probably only 6 or 7 weeks pregnant when I got into quite a bad depression, and I didn't actually get any help. I didn't ask for help. I didn't receive any help until I was about 23, 24 weeks pregnant. So for the first 5 months of pregnancy, it was really about survival. And it was really about trying to reconcile this much wanted, much longed for pregnancy with my brain essentially telling me that he didn't need me, I wouldn't be good for him, and that I should just deliver him and disappear. And I use disappear because I want to be very careful with the language I use around this, but essentially I just did not want to be alive. And so the pregnancy vision of my barefoot baking Mother Earth goddess suddenly became a bit more of a hibernation and a bit more of a kind of survival, which really, I feel very, very naive saying this, but it took me massively by surprise. I didn't know antenatal depression was a thing. I knew postnatal depression was. In some ways, I was actually like, this is going to sound awful, but I was slightly smugly prepared for postnatal, having had like mental health challenges in the past. I thought, of course, I'm going to get postpartum depression. I've got a support system. So when it happened at 6, 7 weeks pregnant, I didn't know what was going on. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to survive it, to be honest.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And you mentioned postnatal depression is a thing, but as a midwife, I can tell you antenatal depression is also a thing. It's just not really talked about because, of course, all those fears around, oh my goodness, I'm about to be responsible for someone else. Am I am I fit? Am I able to? Am I worthy? Like all of these. Let me give you it's a very poor example in comparison to motherhood. Basically, years ago, I got kittens. I'm going off on a tangent here, but I remember driving at one point and I was at a traffic lights and I just thought, oh my goodness, like I'm actually responsible for like something that is breathing, that is dependent on me to feed it. And I think I was having like palpitations at the stoplight. I was thinking, how am I actually going to cope?
Yeah.
Like it pales nothing in comparison to motherhood. But I'm just showing you, like, if someone is worried about keeping pets, let alone motherhood and the vast responsibility it comes with. So I'm just saying that to say, like, you're not alone. I've been in so many clinic sessions, discussions, conversations around women who just, they genuinely think they're alone in feeling like this. What you're saying is very common. It's very valid. And thank you so much for sharing that.
No, of course. And it's interesting you say, you used a word there that hadn't come to my mind before, but it's absolutely spot on, which is worthy. Am I worthy of this gift? Am I, yeah, worthy is just the best word for it, because there's also just so much stigma. Like, I'm in my late 30s, and it's fair to say that we all have different like paths to parenthood if that's what we choose. And we conceived relatively easily. And there is almost this sense of, well, I need to be grateful. I'm not having fertility struggles. So how dare I? How dare I say, hey guys, like, I don't think I want to be here. How dare I say I am not worthy of this when there are so many women out there and men who would like kill to be in my partner's position. And that just meant I didn't talk about it. I didn't tell anyone because I thought I sounded ungrateful. I thought I sounded spoilt. I thought I sounded whiny, you know? So I did keep it very much largely to myself. So when you said that word worthy, that really resonated with me and kind of guided some of the choices I think that I made in those early days.
And what made you said you asked for help around 23 weeks? What made you ask for help? What triggered that?
I didn't ask for help. It wasn't me.
Okay.
So I've been quite honest with my partner that this is how I was feeling. And like, I told him the exact day that I like to call it, like the day the fog rolled in. I remember it crystal clear. And I knew something was changing with me, with my hormones, with my brain chemistry, like the way I was responding to things. And so he was very, very well aware. And we had one of the benefits, one of the benefits to be being labeled high risk. I was high risk for, I think it was my age, but also I have a high BMI, so automatically high risk, is I had quite a few consultant appointments. Now, forgive me if I use like the wrong terminology for what the doctors are called. I think it was a consultant. And she wasn't the consultant I was supposed to see. And she was hilarious and really to the point. And, you know, she took my blood pressure by like listening. I don't know how you know, she used the stethoscope and counted. And I was like, yeah, old school, I like this. And my boyfriend said, oh, she's got some anxiety. Is there anyone we can talk to? And I was furious. Firstly, that he brought it up. Secondly, I didn't have anxiety. I wasn't nervous about motherhood. I didn't have anxiety about motherhood. I didn't want to be here. And I think I like snapped back. I don't have anxiety. I'm effing depressed. And this consultant took one look at me and she basically started this. And I have to say, I'm hugely grateful for this. She basically started like a cascade of care, which meant that very quickly I was into clinic with a mental health midwife it was probably the most honest, raw hour of my life. She knew everything about me. And that set off like a series of, I don't want to say interventions because I don't think that's the right word, but kind of like an umbrella of care. So I was really lucky that I had some meetings with a psychiatrist. I had discussions about medication. It's quite scary because once you're in a system like that, it can be a little bit overwhelming, particularly when you're already having additional care because you're really, really fat and fat people can't have healthy kids. So it was a bit much having meeting upon meeting upon meeting. And it did get to a point where I was like, I'm so done with this. But I'm massively grateful for that very short conversation that meant I did get help, and I'm obviously still here. My kid's 16 months old. I survived postpartum. The depression didn't come back. Like, I'm in a really, really, really good place. And that, I don't believe that would have happened if my partner hadn't shouted his mouth off without my permission. I think I was relieved. So that the journey home, I was actually more annoyed that he'd gotten the terminology wrong, because I felt like, oh, I'm finally going to get help and people are just going to sit me down and go, it's normal to be anxious. And I was like, oh my God, this is not what's going on for me. So I think I was part relieved. I was a bit embarrassed. I was a bit kind of, and I think I probably had like a rant against the patriarchy. I was quite hormonal, but I think I was like, of course they're going to listen to a man. And and I still kind of stand by that a little bit. But yeah, the conversation was like a game of another game of two halves. I was like part very relieved, very grateful, and the other part just like go away. I wanted everyone to go away at that point. You know what it's like when you're constantly being monitored, and it's a lot. It's a lot. But yeah, he's a good and you know.
Oh, good, good. We'll get to all the monitoring in a second. And actually, just for context, do you want to say briefly how we know each other, Gabriella?
Yes. So I call Rosemary my angel, which is not hyperbole. So Rosemary actually delivered my baby boy Rafa.
You birthed,
which
I
was
witnessed it. Let's just correct that.
Oh,
I didn't deliver.
yeah. I birthed my baby. Rosemary did a lot. Let me tell you, Rosemary witnessed, and I mean, we'll get to this whenever you want, but I like to say Rosemary gave me, and I will use that word gave. You gave me the birth that I deserved, that I think all women deserve, and you allowed me to put trust back into my body. The trust that like my brain had already, but felt like it had betrayed me for 9 months at that point. And your presence and what you did in that moment in that room gave me back my agency and my trust in my body. So
Aw.
yeah, that's how we know each other.
Yes, I did look after Gabriella last year. And we'll get a bit later on. And, you know, please feel free to ask me questions as well. So I mentioned about getting the support. What other tools or tactics helped, whether it was lifestyle changes? What would you say helped you along the way?
Yeah, so I think one of the main things actually was, and I kind of touched on it a little bit, was feeling betrayed by my brain made me want to trust more in my body. So the things that really, really helped me and actually completely reversed that fear I mentioned about birth and thinking I would need an elective C-section, the things that really, really helped me are twofold. So one was really getting to grips with the types of conversation and the types of, what's the right word for this? The types of discrimination is not the right word. It's way too strong, but the perception of you as a bigger person,
The stereotype as well?
those, yeah, exactly. Like the stereotypes of having a higher BMI and, you know, everyone thinking that you must be super unhealthy and you can't possibly be looking after your body and your mind and your child. So educating myself on that, so nothing surprised me within our NHS system, was the number one thing I did. So I sought out a midwife who was incredible at empowering women with bigger BMIs, really breaking down the risks and what certain things mean. So like when sonographers write on your notes, you know, I don't know the right way, but bad view because of maternal habitus or whatever. Basically, you got a fat belly, can't see the baby. Sure. That stuff, because I was expecting it, it didn't upset me. It didn't hurt me. It didn't disturb my peace. I was just like, okay, this is what's going to happen at my scans. I'm going to be referred to consultant care. They're probably going to tell me I've got gestational diabetes. Spoiler alert, I didn't. Perfect result. They're going to say all of this stuff. And what I did that I think was game changing is I tried to educate my partner in that. I tried to say to him, look, you're gonna read the reports and it's gonna say this is what it means. Because what I didn't want is him finding out in that moment and coming from a place of protection and emotion that would just make me feel more uncomfortable. So that was the most important thing I did in terms of preparing myself, what I would say kind of practically. And then the other was very much birth focused. So once the kind of mental health support kicked in, and I waited till very late in my pregnancy, but I did go on an SSRI. I think I'm saying that right. I was 36 or 37 weeks pregnant at that point. And for me, that was game changing. It was what I needed. But what it did is it allowed my brain the space to really prepare for my birth. And I went back to my barefoot dungaree, you know, Mother Nature, God be with me vibe birth that I really wanted. And a big part of that was meditation, was prayer as well. Like, so meditation, but also prayer. Lots and lots of, like, this is going to sound a bit mad, but lots of like Hertz frequencies, because apart from anything else, Rafa, the baby, would respond to them as well. So it was a nice way of bonding. I still do it now. And I used to do it when Rafa was born, so that it would like really calm him down. So it was great. Yeah, that helped me get into like a space of empowerment, I think, because that is what I wanted for this birth. I saw this as, yeah, Rafa's birth, it's my birth, and taking that ownership, even though it was at the very end of my pregnancy, was hugely important to me. I loved it.
Amazing. And did you have anyone around you who had had positive births that you can draw from?
Not really. People don't tell you about the positive stuff. My younger brother is much younger than me. He's like 12 years younger than me. So I remember my mum being in labor. And I remember my mum like, now I think back and I'm like, I don't know how she hid this. She just took it like a champ. She was absolutely like, yeah, I'm in the bath, I'm chill, I'm fine. And one of my friends had 2 incredible home births. But apart from that, no. And I was the first one in my, like, we didn't do NCT, we did like an equivalent, a local equivalent of it. But I was the first one due. So even at that point, I was like, no one can tell me good stuff. So no, really, it wasn't really out there, which was such a shame, really.
Interesting. So we've talked about sort of the mental health aspects. Going through
Yeah.
the trimesters, talk about your experience in terms of like bodily changes, your perception of the
Yes.
world, people around you, blocking away negative stories. How did you navigate that?
Yeah, love that. So first trimester was, the bodily changes were mad. Like, I looked more pregnant at 5 weeks and 5 months. I don't know what that is about, but it was like the bloat. I was like, immediately I had, like, I've got a picture, and honest to goodness, I look so pregnant. I look more pregnant than I ended up at the end of my pregnancy. I went for a massage. I was living in Portugal at the time. I went for a massage, not realizing you weren't supposed to do that at 5 weeks. Sorry, my bad. And they thought I was 5 months pregnant, and there was a language barrier. So I just thought it was a language thing. And then when I left, I kind of caught sight of myself in the mirror, and I was like, interesting. That for me was, yeah, the gas was the biggest change. And that did not go for a long time. But I think the biggest change was probably, yeah, second trimester. And that's where I almost became like, I got this real confidence in, like, my bodily changes. Again, I've got to say, one of the benefits to being bigger and to having a higher BMI, I've had stretch marks since I was 12. They don't bother me. I got them at puberty. I've had cellulite since I was 15, probably. It is what it is. So actually, the fluctuations in weight and stuff, I just was like, well, I've been here before, I've done this before. It is just part of my life, I guess. So I felt I didn't have that, oh my goodness, my body is changing thing. But my confidence grew in terms of shutting off negativity, both from like within the system and within, the kind of healthcare system, but also within like my old life. If there were, oh, I didn't even realize I just said old life then. I guess that's what it felt like, my old life. The surround sound that sometimes like drowns out our own voice and our own instinct about like people who may be good for us and not good for us, or situations we want to be in. It was almost like I had this, like, I've never thought of it like this, but it was like I had this bubble of light around me that was just like, you've got something more important than all this other stuff now. You've got something that is worth protecting. And that was like, that's been the biggest shift for me, which I loved. And then last trimester, I guess the biggest change is because the depression started abating a bit, I was able to really, really enjoy being pregnant and, like, sounds really silly, but, like, dressing the bum. And I went to my sister-in-law's wedding and I wore something I would never wear not pregnant. But I was like, "No one can say to me because 'cause I'm pregnant, so it's all fine. I'm gonna wear this skin tight suit." I did. So that was, like, a really positive thing for me. But yeah, bodily I was surprised actually by how much the bodily changes didn't get to me at all. I think maybe my brain had so much on that I couldn't worry about another stretch mark. I just couldn't do it. You know, it just wasn't.
And then what about things like nutrition, your relationship with food? How was that?
So I'd say nutrition, first trimester, terrible. Everything made me feel nauseous. So it was apples and ginger biscuits pretty much every single day. But then I got very aware. I think within my second trimester, I started doing like a little bit more research in terms of the nutrients that would make me feel better and give me more energy. And just like I was expecting to find out something like groundbreaking. And it was like leafy greens and like, well, there's loads of other stuff. But it was things like that where I was like, yeah, I don't eat enough spinach. I should probably do that. Maybe some goji berries. I mean, cool. Chia. Who doesn't love a bit of chia pudding? So it was like there were things that I just felt like, okay, I can increase that. I can do that. And I started taking my kind of supplementation a little bit more seriously as well, but also some omegas, some vitamin D, some different bits and bobs because I felt so sick I wasn't eating enough. And I actually lost quite a bit of weight in my second
Mm.
trimester because I just felt so nauseous. But postpartum nutrition was very, very high on my kind of thought list and something I knew would have a massive role in my recovery.
Mm.
So yeah, kind of stepping into it as much as I could, as much as I had brain space for. I can definitely say that if I were to be pregnant again, nutrition would factor in more
Mhm.
highly
Mhm.
because I know the difference it makes and I'll be a lot older. So I guess that's where it came to you because, and I'll say this on record, I would never give birth again without Rosemary to wit.
To witness.
And I've got it now. I've got it legally binding. You've promised. You've promised. You've got to do it.
I would be honored.
Honestly, even my partner said this. My partner's like, "What are we gonna do? We have to find Rosemary because if we ever want another baby, you're not gonna wanna do it with anyone else." And I was
Oh,
like, "What?
yeah,
That's not
you guys are
true. I'm
you're
not."
very sweet, and again, when we kind of come onto this in a few moments, I always need to kind of deflect, if that's the right term, back onto you because I know even during the birth, I know you needed and you wanted a lot of reassurance. And my role in that moment was just to let you know how much you were just more than capable. You were doing it. You didn't need
Yeah.
me. But I get it as well because I think all of us at any point, at any stage, when we're doing something that is big and momentous, we want validation as well. We want support. We want reassurance. Even if we are more than capable, sometimes just having someone there does help. Just having someone just as a fly on the wall sometimes just helps because they seen you and you've got someone to just kind of like just bounce back and be like, okay, yeah, no, I am doing it. And you did it and you did it so well. Um just to go.
I'm gonna disagree with you though for a second.
Okay.
I love that you're deflecting it back into me and like I said, like I claim that. I smashed
Yes,
it,
you
right?
did.
I'll absolutely claim that. We'll get onto this. Unmedicated, guys. We'll get onto that. I do feel like I smashed it, and I do very much feel like I did myself really, really
Mm.
proud, actually. No, not no buts. And I don't think I know that if you hadn't been in that room, my birth would not have gone the way it
Mhm.
went. I know that. My heart, my soul, my body, my every part of me and my partner, we know that. So I do wanna, and again, I know we'll get onto the birth, but I do just want to take that moment to say, when I say my angel when I say, "Oh, I couldn't do it without Rosemary." Yeah, I'm being like all kind of, "Ooh, hey, hey." But actually at the core of it is we as women need that sisterhood in that way. And you are a part of our story in a way. Like, I'm shocked you even remember us, to be honest, because you must still, I mean, I want to know how many babies you've witnessed, but like you're a part of our story in a way that nowhere else in the entire world is going to be part of our story. It's an incredible thing to know. So there you go. I'm going to disagree. So I'm deflecting back on to you. As you will.
Well,
Don't cut me off. You.
No, I receive it gracefully because, yeah, it's not many people get to see, you know, what we see like as true midwives, not the cookie cutter, you know, Cinto epidural type midwife, but like truly the ones who are just patient and just step back and just witness that space. They're okay with things not happening fast, you know, and that's the kind of birth I would want. I mean, it's very hard to achieve that in the NHS. That's why I say, like, you know, what you achieved is not easy. And yes, you do need someone who sees your vision and is willing to travel with you. So I hear you in that aspect. I just want to backpedal a little bit back to nutrition. And then we'll get into your birth story, because nutrition for me, and this is one of the reasons why, yes, I left the labor ward setting within the NHS, but I still enjoy doing clinics. So I kind of do like agency style shifts in a clinic setting, because for me, the education is so key to be able to speak to women about what are you eating, you know, your bowel movements, what are your expectations and your perceptions of birth? And beyond all of that, what do you see your motherhood stage looking like? Because, and especially the setting that I'm in, a lot of the women that I see, they're there for like extra monitoring. So maybe they've come in before for reduced movement, or they're carrying a small baby, you know, SGA, small for gestational age, or they are carrying a large baby. They're never the right size. They're either too small or too big, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Or they've got preeclampsia. It seems everybody has preeclampsia now. You know, and there are women who genuinely have white coat syndrome, but then no, that's not true. They've been told, no, you've probably got preeclampsia. And it's like, everyone with a high blood pressure cannot have preeclampsia. Like it's literally impossible. But anyway, so these are the types of women that I tend to see, and their pregnancy is literally just a series of appointments. It's just like within a 1 week space, they will have maybe 4 or 5 appointments. That's just crazy. They've got scans and then consultant appointment, then midwife appointment. Then they'll come to the clinic. By the time you know it again, the next scan is rolled round. And my question is always, in terms of food, like, what are your favorite foods? What nutrition are you surrounding yourself with? What research have you done? What does a healthy pregnancy look like to you? And for most of them, they can't answer that, because for them, it's just the birth and the TENS machine and what they're going to have around them and how many birth partners. They haven't even thought past, like, what does motherhood look like? What does teaching your child look like? What does, you know, growing and going for what, just nature, what does all of that look like to you as a parent? And you'll find not many people have gone past that stage. And I always liken it. The analogy that just best speaks to this is engagement, wedding, and the marriage. So you've got the engagement, which is the pregnancy. You've got the wedding, which is the birth. And then you've got the marriage, which is parenthood and postpartum phase. And we're so engulfed in the engagement. You rarely hear people talk about how much they want to be a wife or their duties as a wife. It's all about, you know, the flower arrangements and the table setting and the venue and what's the weather going to be. Like, it's just all this stuff about the wedding. Like, no one really talks about what is it like afterwards. That's really when the fun and games begin, you know? Everyone wants to talk about like the birth or the wedding day. It's one day, or maybe in certain cultures, maybe it's 1 week, but it will come and it will go so quickly. And I always say to women, just to put things in perspective, actually the birth is probably the easiest part. I know for some women, they will hear that and be, what do you mean it's easy? In terms of when you look at put things in perspective, it's the easiest part of your journey, because it will come and it will go. Yes, for some, it's the most traumatic. It doesn't need to be. A lot of the time, that's based off of ripple effects of decisions that have been made during the pregnancy and allowing other people to bamboozle you into thinking that you need all these interventions. But a lot of the time, when you kind of look past it, the birth is actually the easiest stage. And then you've got the postpartum. The nutrition needs, like, you need to triple down on that. Your support system, yes, have the wonderful shower and baby shower and all of that. But instead, I mean, if money is tight, I'd rather you ask people to invest in your postpartum. I always say to women that I speak to or consult with, who's in your postpartum squad, like who's in your team, who's going to be bringing you food, who's going to come and help you do the dishes, wash all of that, because that helps massively with your mental health. It helps massively with you being able to bond with your baby, rather than all of this prep being done during your pregnancy, all of this, the baby shower, all of that. And when all of that is done and you give birth, it's just radio silence. Is you in your home with your baby. Sometimes your partner's gone back to work. Then what?
And all of those high risk appointments fall off a cliff, which is, you know, don't get me wrong, great. But then you are just literally sitting there like, oh, okay, I guess I'll see a health visitor maybe in 2 weeks. We're like, okay, cool. So I couldn't agree more. And I think I'm not pro baby shower anyway. I mean, each their own. It's not for me. I'm much more of a come and see them when they're born. Please bring me a lasagna. Like, we're good. My friends are really good cooks, so I got quite lucky. But no, I couldn't agree more. And I think not enough discussion is had about that within like those clinical settings. Like all the things you just said, you talk to women about, no one said to me. So like I didn't have the only times I had discussions about my nutrition was when my baby was too small, then my baby was too big, then he was too small, and we just kept flip-flopping between, what do you have? Nothing. I have absolutely nothing. I have a 7-pound something baby. That's it. So I think those conversations, if we're really worried about risks for women, some of those conversations I would love if they were more commonplace. If those were also the things that were discussed and explored, not just, oh, you know, you've got a bit of high blood pressure here, there, and everywhere. But maybe that's wishful thinking within, you know, the system that we have.
Okay. Let's get into your birth. So in the days leading up to your birth, what was that like?
So I've always maintained that I was due on the 18th, that I did my calculations. I know due dates are a window, but I was like, I'm pretty sure it's the 18th. But I was of January. I was dated as the 15th. So I already knew there was going to be chat about me being overdue when I didn't feel like I was overdue at all. But on the Monday, I'll work backwards. My baby was born on a Friday, 6:30 on the dot on a Friday night. On the Monday prior, I had lost my mucus plug. I was really delighted about that because I knew that my midwife appointment on the Tuesday, there was going to be a conversation about induction. So on the Tuesday, I was only 40 plus 1, but I was like, here we go. Of course, this is happening. And it did. And there was an agreement that I would come back on Friday to discuss. Now, I'd made it very, very clear that induction was not something I was going to be scared into. And it was possibly the most frustrating few days of my entire pregnancy. I had to sit through so many conversations about, forgive me if I get this wrong, shoulder dysplasia. Dystocia, thank you. About my baby being far too big for my body. Again, he wasn't, maybe 7 and a bit pounds. And about the risks to me not being induced. My concern with being induced was I had a very strong feeling that it would start a cascade that could not be walked back from. But in those moments, I think I probably seemed very, and I hate this word, I think I probably seemed very compliant. And then behind closed doors, I was like, no, it's my body. Like, no one can actually make me go into hospital for this. But so I was absolutely delighted when at 8 a.m. on the Thursday morning, my contractions started. And they were on and off all day on the Thursday. They got whatever the timings are. By 1 o'clock Friday morning, they were at the timed intervals that you have to go to the hospital. So I went in to the maternity assessment unit, had a bit of a fight with the Uber driver because he kept turning the temperature in the car up. And if anyone's watching this, listening to this, who's ever been in labor, I don't think it's just me who is insanely hot. And so I kept rolling down the window, and then he'd turn it up, and I'd roll down another window. And we were just in this hilarious battle whilst I had half an eye mask on and listening to my meditations, my hypnobirthing meditations. It was comical, but, it wasn't the best. But by the time I was assessed, I was convinced. I was like ready to push. I was, let's go. And I was 1 centimeter dilated. No, I think I was half a centimeter. So this is 3 a.m. Friday morning. My contractions started 8 a.m. the day before. I was less than a centimeter after having my first cervical exam, which was possibly, being really honest, worse than labor. Really found it very shocking to my system. Wasn't prepared for it whatsoever. And for some reason, they let me stay. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask you. I don't know if you know why, but I wasn't sent home. We were all told in our birth prep classes, if you go to hospital too soon, you are sent home. For some reason, I wasn't sent home. And by 9 a.m., I was kept in the little assessment side room and given some paracetamol, I think, which, was really, didn't do anything. And then by 9 a.m., I was in a shared room, and I was kind of just left alone. Other than being told there was no lunch. So I just didn't eat. I was like, fine, I can't be bothered. And my partner went down to the, I think it was a Costa. I don't remember what it was, but to get me some ice. And I was largely left alone until I rang the emergency bell. I'm going to probably get the timings wrong. I think about 4 just after 4 p.m. because I felt like I was holding him in with a Kegel. I was like, this is happening. And I remember the look on the nurse who came to me, very lovely, but her look was, you're probably only going to be a centimeter again. And I had another cervical exam, which I couldn't even feel by this point, and my waters broke. And I was, I think, 8.5 centimeters dilated. So I should say throughout that time where I was largely left alone, the times when I wasn't alone, I was told that I would almost definitely have to be put on, again, I'm just using the jargon I remember being told, the drip. Assuming that's the oxytocin
Well, the
drip.
hormone drip, not so oxytocin drip. Yeah.
That thing. And I remember being told I probably wouldn't dilate more than 4 centimeters alone. So we would have to give me if I wanted an epidural, because this was going to be a long old day, I would have to have the epidural and then the drip. And I, in my head, kind of internalized that and almost accepted it. I was being told this isn't going to happen for you. So by the time the same nurse gave me the cervical exam that broke my waters, I was almost under this, and I want to be very, very honest with you, I reverted to being a little child. In that moment, I was like, mother's here, and I'm just going to do what I'm told. I felt completely, having been quite in control, I spent the whole time doing my breathing. My partner was just chilling. I was really in my zone. And when my waters broke and there was a bit of meconium in my waters, everyone was going like crazy. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm giving birth. And I felt in that moment at the mercy of this particular nurse. And I remember saying to her, you're not going to leave me, are you? Even though now when I think about it, I'm so glad that she didn't end up being there for the end, just because we weren't the right fit for the type of birth I needed. And I remember her saying, well, I don't know about that. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I got into the bed so I had to cross the corridor between the the 2-person kind of chill out zone to labor room 10. I remember the numbers. And I was on the bed, and suddenly all the things that I didn't want happened at once. So I must have said I wanted the epidural for the that guy. Thank you. For him to come in, very nice guy. For him to come in, I must have said I wanted it. But he was explaining to me all the risks, which I completely respect that they need to do, but he was giving me chapter and verse whilst I was being strapped onto these monitors, some passive aggressive comments about not being able to heal the baby's heartbeat, which you don't want to hear because I'm too fat. Again, I don't know if we've mentioned it, Rosemary. I'm too fat to have a healthy baby. Too fat to give birth, guys. And I was on my back. And I remember saying, I can't give birth on my back. And there's lots of different reasons for this. Partly it's preference, partly it's all the education that I'd done. But it's also partly the way my body is, the way my pelvis is. Like, I don't expect you to remember what my birth canal's like, Rosemary, but I knew I had to be on my side. I just knew it. And I was told, well, you have to be. Whilst I'm contracting at 9 centimeters dilated, whilst the epidural man is telling me that one in however many, I don't want to say it because I might be wrong, one in however many fail, and all this stuff happened. And in that moment, my memory of it, and I'd love to know if your memory is different, Rosemary appeared. And I remember saying a couple of things to you. I remember saying, do I have to have this? As in the epidural. And I remember, and it's going to be so funny if I actually didn't say any of this, but I think I did. I said to you, do I have to do this? And you said, I can't tell you what to do. Because I also said, what should I do? And you're like, I can't tell you what to do. But what you have to think about is it might give you this much relief for this much time. And you have to know whether that's worth it or not. And I think I said something to you like, oh, is the baby coming soon? And you said, he's coming or it's coming before the end of my shift. And I was like, all right then. And I remember almost like locking eyes with you and just either saying, or I probably wasn't as eloquent as I'm being now, but I probably said something along the lines of, I don't want it, get him out. Or I don't want it, I'm not doing this, or something like that. And my memory is within 90 seconds, the whole room changed. I remember it becoming almost immediately becoming the environment that I needed. I felt a sense of peace and calm. And I remember saying to you, I can't remember how to push. And you're like, don't worry about it. And you're like, I'm going to talk you through it. But just when I say, hold it in, hold it in. And I was like, yeah, cool. I can do that. I can follow instruction. And I remember the room was quieter. I was suddenly on my side. I had the gas and air. Although both you and my partner said, only use it when you have to. And I was like, believe me, I'm only using it when I have to. And before I knew it, I was in this beautiful space where I felt my son was birthing himself. And he kept giving me a warning. He kept pushing on me 3 times. And then I'd shout, Rosemary, he's coming. And that just kept happening. Whether I said it out loud or in my head, I don't know. But it ended up being the most beautiful delivery. So even though that little piece of real stress, actually, that I believe would not have led to a good delivery for me or the baby, it felt like it turned around in a matter of seconds. And like I said, and I don't want to presume that you remember it the same way I do, because, I've only done this once, you've done this thousands of times. But
Hundreds of births,
can I
but
ask,
definitely more than 1,000 women
hundreds?
that I've looked after. Yeah.
Oh. So if I may ask, from your perspective, when you walked in that room, what was your take on it? Because we've spoken a little bit since, literally just like in the very recent past, about kind of me saying that I had like prayed for someone like you, and you having a feeling when people needed, you were the right person for them. So when you stepped into that room, what was your take on it?
So I'm going to answer or comment on some of the things you said before. So when you were in the induction bay, the 2-person bay, I'm imagining they kept you in probably either to do an augmentation of labor. So it's not quite induction because you've already started labor yourself, but in case your contractions don't pick up, and I guess in there, again, according to their books, you're high risk. So in case anything happens, they don't want to keep you in, because if you go home and then end up giving birth, on your way home in an Uber, So I imagine for whatever reason, they made the decision to keep you in. And then when you say the midwife then gave you the cervical sweep, the vaginal exam or cervical exam, that was probably unnecessary, and then broke your waters, do you remember her asking for permission to break your waters, or was it kind of a, like, what was that like? Because was your expectation that she was just going to give you a cervical sweep and then oops, she's broken your waters? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. So firstly, my first instinct was, and I do appreciate this, but my first instinct was, I am telling you this baby's coming out. If you really want to check, you can, but I'm telling you it's happening. So the idea that I had to be checked before being moved really stressed me out in that moment. But no, it was, so okay, this is a good question. Did my water pop routinely, or did she break my waters? Like, is it possible? Like, that's the thing I actually don't know at the time, because at the time, the what I heard and what I am sure of actually was, I'm just going to check. I'm just going to check how
And,
dilated you are. That's all
and
the
prior to
conversation
this,
was.
your waters had not gone.
No, my waters hadn't gone
Interesting.
at all. And even when it happened, I said, "What was that?" And she went, "Oh, your waters are broken." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And she's like, "There's meconium." And I was like, "Of course there is. It's my child. He's gonna love pooing. It's fine." And by this point, I'm like, I know he's coming. Again, I had these moments, like these flashes of being super empowered, and then these moments of being like, help me. Because it was such a, oh, there was a real dominance in that dynamic between me and this particular nurse that I think, and I'm sure for some it works really, really well. For me, it wasn't going to work well. So yeah, no, there was no conversation about my waters being broken. I till this second assumed it just happened because that happens when you do
Mm,
an exam.
no, and this is the thing, it's really hard to break waters, generally speaking, because if you imagine, physiologically, this amniotic sac, it has to be strong. It's very resilient. It's tough, so that it's not just easy to break that barrier that's protecting baby from the outside world, from infection,
Yeah.
all of that. So if someone has offered you a cervical check and then seconds later your water is broken, it's highly likely that that midwife broke your waters without permission, without really gaining consent, which is disrespectful.
Yeah, definitely no consent. There was definitely no consent given, and it was almost like because there was, and I do appreciate the meconium in waters is like not always great and all that kind of stuff. It was the tiniest bit, and it was almost like it was used again as a bit of a, oh, things aren't going well, like, I've been left here alone
Mm,
for a really long time. I think I'm all right. But yeah, no, that's really interesting. It never occurred to me that it wasn't almost just like an accident, like that it just
mm,
happened. Interesting.
mm. One of my pet peeves. Okay. And then to answer your question, Gabriella. So when I walked into the room, I remember being given a handover about this high risk lady. It was the BMI. I remember being told you were GDM, gestational diabetes. I'm quite sure, or at risk or some nonsense, but it was a SGA, so it was a small baby. And when I walked in, high risk or not, to me, high risk means nothing and low risk means nothing. We can't call the future. We don't know what's going to happen. I've seen women who are considered morbidly obese have what appears to be very simple vaginal births, and women who are tiny
Yeah.
have the most complicated, unnecessarily traumatic births. Like, being big in itself doesn't really mean much. So when I walked in, I was given that handover. So just to give context as well, so I came in around 5 p.m., 5:30 or something. The shift finishes around 8 or quarter to 8. From your behavior, the sounds, I was like, yeah, this woman's going to give birth soon. But I know they were setting up, the anaesthetist was setting up to do an epidural, I think, already when I had walked in. And he was just like waiting and thinking, because you were not in a position to have an epidural. And deep down in my heart, I was thinking, I hope you don't get the epidural, because if you just birth this baby, it's done. You don't have to deal with the not being able to walk after, the possible back pain, the headaches, just, yeah, all of that. And I'm just thinking, like, I honestly just wanted you to just birth because I knew you could do it. And then, so the anaesthetist I know was kind of waiting in the background. He'd already set up his, his stuff, his instruments. And he was kind of looking at me like, we going ahead. And I said, I don't think it's going to happen. Like, and then I remember asking you, I think I asked you, like, do you want the epidural? And you were saying something like, you don't think you can get into position. And I said, and I remember turning to him saying, you know what, like, let's leave it. It's fine. It's not worth it. So he packed all his stuff, threw it in the he left. He was like, well, call me if you need me. And he left. And I remember you were saying something about the name Rosemary and your auntie. Was it your auntie or something? And I know, you mentioned that you were surprised that I remembered you guys. The thing is, like, the type of midwife I am and wanting to just really advocate and really fight for women, it's not really possible in the NHS. So when I meet women who really do want that time and who want that space and who are like, I can see that, well, if this was a home birth, it just would have been beautiful because I could have just stayed in your garden, minding my own business, and you could just done your thing in your lounge, It was that type of scenario. And like, so no, I very much remember that birth because it was, from a midwife's point of view, it was very challenging because you had people outside who kept wanting to intervene and who just wouldn't leave me alone, who wouldn't leave you alone. And it's like, oh my goodness.
You were so good at holding that space. Like, so good.
It was so frustrating. And honestly, it was one of those days I went home so mentally exhausted, like so exhausted because it's so hard to fight for women who genuinely want the space, who just want to be respected and who want to be left alone. It's hard to do that when you're in an NHS setting. If you had the epidural, the hormone drip, I can understand. Yes, you do need the excess monitoring because, well, you've had your birth intervened with. So we need to monitor because these things will drop the baby's heart rate. I get that. But that you were someone who hadn't had any, well, aside from clearly someone breaking your waters, you hadn't had any outside interventions. So that already gives me peace of mind. I'm not worried when someone hasn't had any. If you were at home, no one would be monitoring you or no, we need to check the baby's heart rate. This literally easily could have happened at home. So the monitoring was happening, the CTG of the baby's heart rate, that was going on. I remember that. And at some point you were then involuntary pushing. So it was just like happening naturally. And then I remember, because all the CTG traces are shown, it appears outside as well. So the team outside, the doctors, the midwives, they can see it, which is why the senior midwife stroke manager kept coming in to say, hey, we're not seeing the heart rate. Can you offer the fetal scalp electrode? The FSC, the clip, the not so clip. Okay, it's a screw. For the record, it's a screw. Okay. Because
in my belly beans,
and just to kind of give you an inside perspective, we all have ways to word things that the woman will pretty much agree to what we're saying, right? And in the same way, I'm transparent and I say, I can even show you what it is. And then you tell me whether you want this clip on your baby's head. And oftentimes, like I remember being a student, I'm just going to go on a very slight tangent here, but I remember being a student, final year, and it was a night shift. It was a very crazy night shift, and it was a full moon because I was thinking these things is so crazy here. And that's why, it, like, people were just like rolling in, like with the head like about to the, birth, and it just so much was happening. But I remember we were in the triage, and there was a woman who came in, and she was almost fully dilated. When the midwife had checked her, she was like 9 centimeters anterior lip, which just basically means there's if you imagine like a swimming cap, it's mostly off, but there's a bit left on the rim, on the head. So it hasn't quite come off yet. The cervix hasn't quite cleared away from the baby's head yet. And so they weren't able to monitor. So then the midwife offered them, this clip. And the partner said, can I see the clip? And I was just stressed out. And I live for these kind of exchanges. I was like, yes, let's show you this clip. So I went and got the clip, showed it. And he was like, you want to put this on my baby's head? And he was asking me, you know,
Mm-mm.
would you put this on? And he turned to me and he said, you know, would you put this on your baby's head? And I was like, do you know what? I probably wouldn't even be in this kind of hospital environment if I'm completely being honest with you. Like, no. So no, I would not put this
Yeah.
clip screw on my baby's head. And so I love when people ask questions. For a lot of midwives, it's really stressful. But I'm just thinking, like, I would hate, what scares me the most is not upsetting my colleagues or, you know, stepping on people's toes, but it's bumping into someone like yourself who've somehow, you know, done a full circle and you've somehow found me online. Like, it's a very small world. And what scares me the most is bumping into someone that I've looked after and her thinking, you know,
Really.
you didn't fight for me, or you didn't do your job, or you didn't do your due diligence to protect me. Like, that more than anything scares me. Like, of course, have I made mistakes? Like,
Yeah.
yes, you always reflect and you always think, oh gosh, I wouldn't do that again. Like,
We do.
and that's
Yeah.
the hallmark of a good or great midwife. You should always be reflecting and think, you know, is there something I did there that I just would make me cringe? Like, I wouldn't want that being done to me. So to go back to your story. So the senior midwife hit coming in and saying, you know, we're not picking it up. Have you offered her the
Mhm.
FSC? It's like, no, I haven't. And to be honest, and up to that point, and still now, up to that point, I've never attached a clip on baby's head, a screw on baby's head.
Yeah.
And I never will. So I wasn't about to start on you and make you my first. I said, no, I have not offered her.
Thank
And he said, well, you know, why don't you offer her? And I think I just, you know, for token's sake, I said, hey, you know, Gabriella, would you like, you know, the FSC clip on your baby's head? It's screwed into your baby's head. And you were like, no, I would not. And I remember you said it so loudly that she just shut the door and just left because she saw how serious you were. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah.
I do. I have a sign. I feel like, thing is, I don't know if I screamed it in my head. I have this weird memory of screaming, go
You did.
away,
You
to that
did.
particular minute. I did. Fine. Because now that makes sense, that it doesn't make sense why they kept asking, but that they could see things outside the door. I was just like,
Yeah.
why is this? And to be fair, I've kind of blocked it out of it because I feel like you did an amazing job of protecting me. And I can only imagine how exhausting that is. Like, giving birth is exhausting, sure, but being in that role, that protector role, like, Lord, that is a big role. And I remember feeling in that moment, oh, I need to apologize to her tomorrow, because I literally just
No, I'm glad you
this
did.
was
I'm glad you
annoying
did.
me
Like,
at
the
that. I'm
interruptions were
sorry.
just excessive. It was
Yeah.
unnecessary. And the thing is, the reason why we weren't picking up is because at the point where baby is traveling further down, so like we're about to see the head, right? We're now trying
Yeah.
to monitor through skin, through muscle, through your pelvic bone. Like, it's not going to pick up as efficiently. And you see, you know, you hear midwives, especially fetal surveillance midwives, say, no, 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 we should still be picking up all the way. And sometimes it's possible, other times it's just not. It's just not my focus. And I remember documenting at the time saying, you know, and being advised, blah, 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 but my focus right now is just on the birth, you know, just to complete the birth. Like, that was my focus. If you can't pick up the heart rate, your goal is still just to birth that baby anyway, and whatever comes, you will deal with that. You know, what else, if instead of
Well,
faffing around, oh, we can't do, oh, do we have the right money? So like, it's just a
yeah.
waste of time. It's just a waste of energy. So my focus at that time was just to, for your sake as well, to just put an end to these interruptions, just to get this. I was like, oh my God, please just birth, like, birth. This is getting out of hand.
I feel like we're remembering because, like, people kept coming in, I think, at really funny junctures. And like I said, I blocked a lot of it out. Like, I feel bad for you because you were the one having to, like, bat for me. But I agree with you, you know, I did feel that he was okay. And I didn't feel the need for any, I mean, not that I would have been able to say it anyway, because I was in my zone. But at that point, as you said, if something wasn't okay that we needed to deal with, what was screwing something into his head going to do? Freak us all out, and then what? Like, I actually don't know the answer to that. Continue birthing, have surgery, like, what would the value or positive benefit be there when I knew we were so close? And we probably would have been a bit closer if people.
What typically would happen in the hospital setting, like if the heart rate dipped, which often, again, it happens because physiologically the contractions are squeezing baby's head, but babies are designed to recover. Heart rate will dip, And then once that contraction ceases, heart rate comes back up and it recovers, which is what was happening in your case. You know the signs of when a baby is just not coping well. Again, the fact that he hadn't had any hormone drips or interventions, all of that, things that would typically mess with baby's heart rate, that was also reassuring for me. So what would normally happen if there was any sort of fear or of, fetal heart rate not recovering, is that they would then try and expedite the birth, whether that's to provide an episiotomy, so a cut, and then to either do an instrumental to pull the baby out, essentially, is what they were trying to decipher. But it just wasn't the case. And again, because you came with this high risk label, they don't know how to snap out of that and think, but the situation we're dealing with is not high risk. You still need to deal with what's in front of you, not just the labels that you think should be attached to this person. And that was what was really stressful. You said something as well, like a while back, about, you remember me saying sort of like, I will tell you what to do or something. And I don't know if I said, and if I did, I apologize, because I also think because of the high tension, maybe that's why I felt like I should like try and offer like extra guidance. My general demeanor, my general, I guess, style is to just let you get on with it. It's not to try and, I can't instruct you, like the baby's not coming out of me. But because there was so much going on, and I think correct me if I'm wrong, you were also really fearful during parts of it and kind of needing some reassurance. I mean, you can kind of provide your take on.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised, I may have completely misquoted you. I know there was a moment where I said something like, I can't remember what to do. And I think maybe I said to you something like, will you tell me? And you maybe said something like, don't worry, or like, do you know what I mean? So I was probably, you're right. That doesn't really sound, so apologies for kind
No,
of
that's fine. That's fine.
truncating. In that moment, like I literally, this is going to sound so, well, I don't know. I think if you believe the way that I do when people are supposed to meet, then you think this sounded completely normal. In that moment when I saw you, I knew everything was going to be okay. And the trust, like I cannot tell you how important it was. I think this is probably true for most women, but how important it was for me to birth. I was willing to let go of my expectations. I was willing to surrender. But for me, surrendering meant trusting my body, trusting that, like, I feel that, like I said, Rafa birthed himself at times. I knew what he was doing. You being there, I definitely needed a moment of validation that I could do this, because all I'd been hearing from other midwives was problems, challenges. And actually, if you look at there were no problems throughout from what I can remember, there were no problems throughout my actual labor. And when you say what you said then about, people are approaching me based on labels in a chart that they don't know, that every single consultant appointment I had, the consultants were, bar one, rolling their eyes at the fact that I was even there. Like, oh, you really don't need to be here, but fine. They don't know that when they see that form or whatever it is that they see. And no one was approaching me as the woman in front of them, apart from yourself. And actually, I think the epidural man, I think he knew it was never going to happen, because he came to see me the next day, which was very sweet of him. But yeah, in that moment, I think I was looking to you, not for that validation in that, like I said, mother help kind of way that I had been looking at the other midwife because I didn't know what else to do. I reverted to that role. I think I was looking at you almost in that sister sense. And you mentioned earlier that I was talking about Rosemary and my aunt. So if I may, I this is super special to me, but so my aunt passed away during COVID, and she and I were very, very close. And she passed away in January. So when I found out I was expecting a baby in January, I was convinced that she would somehow show me that she was still with me, and it was all, I don't know, it was going to be okay, that she was there and she knew this was happening. And I'd had a previous dream where I told her the names that we were looking at. And she had turned around to me and said, How about 3 syllables, but I couldn't hear them. My son's name is Raphael. Just completely unrelated. I'd forgotten about the dream, but that was like mark 1. So then I had another dream about a week before I gave birth where my aunt was cooking. Now, she cooked a lot, but one thing she would never do is put rosemary in chicken. She didn't do that. What she cooked was not rosemary and chicken. And I had a dream that my aunt was cooking chicken and she told me to get rosemary to put it in. And I was like, oh, this is weird, fine, whatever. And I forgot about that dream because I dream about her a lot. I'd forgotten about that dream until you told me your name. And I think I blurted out, I had a dream, chicken, rosemary, my aunt's. I had a lot of gas in there. I'm not going to front. I had like 2 canisters. Do you know I couldn't swallow for a week? I think I went a bit too hard on.
Wow.
So my bad. But yeah, so that was for me again. It was another. And when you say that I say checked in like it's a hotel. When you say you checked in like after 5 and Raf was born at 6:30, it feels like you were with me for like a
Wow.
week in the best. It doesn't feel like it was like an hour and a bit. So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, and I'm sorry if I quoted you
No, not
incorrectly. It
at
was just I
all.
guess
And maybe I did in the moment, you say things just to whatever you feel will provide some reassurance, based on what the woman in front of you is
I
needing.
needed.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that.
It was all amazing, honestly. And like I am so proud of the birth I had, particularly after the type of pregnancy. The birth felt, oh, I keep coming back to this word trust. But I felt you, and maybe some people would say that you don't need that. You don't need that external validation. Good for them. But in that moment, I was vulnerable and I did. You've trusted me. And that was massive. No one had trusted me throughout my pregnancy. No one trusts you for the simple fact of a number. And I don't want to get too emotional about it because actually I was prepared for it. But that in itself, when you realize that no one trusted you, well, maybe that is something that massively contributed to the depression I felt. I'd not really put 2 and 2 together until we're having this conversation, but actually doubt and doubting yourself, not just like, can I be a mother? Can I do this? But actually, can I carry and stay healthy? Can I do this? Can I do that? When people are constantly eroding that, you don't trust yourself anymore. And you do look at people. You either go one way and you go, no, I'm not going to go to any of these appointments. I'm not going to do it. Or you go the other way and you just go, okay, yes. And that's the way that I went externally. So it's really powerful actually talking about this because I really did feel like you trusted me. And that did give me the confidence, I think, to hence why I don't want to do it without you. See, I've changed. I can't do it without you. I don't want to do it without you.
Okay. No, thank you. Let's go back to, because I don't know if we really touched on the birth. So we've
Yeah.
talked about the many interruptions.
Yes.
Let's talk about the birth and when you knew Rafa was birthing himself and, talk about that, please.
Yeah. So throughout all the contractions, and I have to say for me with I think I have quite a high pain threshold, but for me contractions were, I would rather push for 5 days than do another hour of contractions. I'd always had incredibly, incredibly painful periods growing up to the point where I used to like pass out, throw up, like every single time. And I like to say that they must have prepared me for contractions because contractions, I had to keep reminding myself, were me. They were my body. They weren't happening to me. They were me. So when the sensation of birth was so different, it took me massively by surprise. I thought it would just feel like contractions as you're pushing. And for me, it felt like Raf took over. And I mean that in a good way, not in a kind of out of control way. It felt like he was like, I've got this, mum. Like, you've created this nice environment for me. You've gotten rid of the lady that was making me stay inside because I didn't want to see her. You've got Rosemary, let's go. And I felt this like incredible, powerful presence. It didn't feel like pressure. it felt like a presence. And I probably sound absolutely batshit, but it felt like a presence. And like I said, he was giving me 3 warnings. So he'd go presence, presence, present, and then he'd move. And I could feel that each time. And I don't know how many times it took. I remember shouting, Rosemary, he's coming, like 5 times. My partner found it really funny. I think I just forgot he was there. I was like, this is me and Rosemary. This is us. It was like, just go and get some poor guy. He was amazing, obviously, but in that moment, there's not much he can do. And so birthing Ram felt like a real team effort between me and him. Don't get me wrong, you were amazing. Thank you for holding me together. And my partner was amazing, holding my leg. But it was me and Raf in that. Sorry, he's screaming. I hope you can't hear him. It was he and I. We were a little team. It was a let's do this. And like, I felt in that moment, I knew him so well. I was like, I know what he's going to do. This is going to happen next. And I remember a moment, I think it was when his head came out. And I don't remember this. I've been told this. My boyfriend Matthias looked dead into Rafa's eyes. And I think Rafa was just like, and he had the cord around his neck. And Matthias has said to me, I looked at Rosemary and I was like, I'm not going to panic unless Rosemary does. She's got this. And you unwound it. And for me, it was a matter of seconds. I could feel something. And then it's like he exhaled and his whole body came out. I didn't push. And I remember you saying, meet your baby, or welcome to your baby, or something. You said something really lovely. And I was in so much shock. I think our skin to skin, you put him on my thigh because I couldn't get him. I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And it was when I saw him, I knew him. It wasn't like, oh my God, I love you so much. It wasn't that. I was too tired. I knew him. I knew him so well. And I still have that now. I look him in the eye and I'm like, I just know you. And it was just amazing. And I had that kind of quite like blissful little time of him just being on me. I mean, I wish someone had told me what it was like birthing a placenta. I don't know if you remember my reaction, but I think I saw quite a lot. I was not happy. I thought it just slid out. I didn't think it had to be birthed. So that was the only bit of the actual birth that I really was not a fan of. But I just remember looking over and my boyfriend was holding him and he'd pooed all down him. He was doing skin to skin and he was just covered in baby waste. And I just remember looking down and just thinking, yeah, I did that. And I remember thinking, I can't wait to do it again. I think always thought I was one and done. I go to bed sometimes if I've had like a hard day or I'm feeling a bit down or whatever. I go to bed reliving my birth experience. And I get such a high from it. It was such a gift.
Oh,
It really was such a gift.
wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Not the placenta.
Not the placenta.
Placenta was terrible.
Oh, thank you so much.
Did I have the injection? I think I did.
I think you did. I think you'd opted for it. I'm not sure. But in hindsight, you didn't need it. Your blood loss was very minimal. And just to clarify, so baby was completely born before I unwound the cord because it's very hard to do whilst the head is still, well, just basically sitting at your perineum. Yeah. Because if you imagine, let me actually, well, this would be beneficial to the viewers, not so much the listeners. So this, what I'm showing to the listeners, I'm showing an anatomical pelvis with a baby, right? So which way are we going? Okay, yes. So this is the front of the pelvis, yeah? So as the baby's head comes out, it's literally like it's sitting. You've got like thighs here. So it's kind of just sitting there. at your vulva. So it'll be hard to take the cord and then bring it over
Yeah.
the head without causing serious issues. So you'd have to kind of wait for the baby to be slowly born first. And then that's when I then unwound the cord.
Oh,
Yeah.
amazing. Well, thanks for doing
Yeah.
it. Evidently, I didn't know what was going on.
No, it's fine. You know, it can seem like there's so much going on. Obviously, you know, you always feel like some hands and motions around you. But yeah, it was just amazing to, and I was so, when it happened, and I think you were like, oh my gosh, like I've done it. I'm like, yes, yes, you've done it. Like, you know,
I did
it's
it.
done, it's complete. And the relief as well, the relief on my end that just the interruptions can just stop. I was relieved
Yeah.
for you as well. And yeah, thank you for just allowing me to be part of your birth space, you know, and I'm so glad that we get to have this conversation. It's not often that you get to listen
Yeah.
to a conversation between a woman and the midwife, you know, who looked after her. So and thank you for just being so open, you know, on your experiences,
Well,
because
thank
I know that a lot of women listening, a lot of fathers listening will be able to relate to your experience.
you.
Um, in terms of your postpartum, did you feel
Yeah.
well supported?
Yes, I think so. It was kind of, again, a bit of a funny one for me. So I had unexpectedly moved back in with my parents. Well, my boyfriend and I both had moved back in with my parents. And that wasn't the postpartum dream, I'll be very honest. And my mum wouldn't mind me saying that it isn't what either of us would have thought. We're very, very close, but we just never would have thought that we would do that. And it was just the biggest blessing, biggest gift. My mom was obviously incredible. My dad was obviously incredible. It gave me and Matthias and Rafa an opportunity to really, really bond, actually, without thinking about the things like, what are we going to eat? You know, do we have enough nappies? Like, they were so, it was like being at one of those fancy postpartum retreats.
Oh.
If a postpartum retreat was in South London and you're in your old childhood bedroom, you know, that kind of, it was honestly like, it was really beautiful. In terms of kind of like support within the system, so I gave birth in one area, but I lived in another. So I got transferred to the local team. And what I will say is, broadly, I feel like the support I was given, again, once you're in the system from a mental health perspective, you get a lot more support. So I had, and forgive me if I'm getting this wrong, but I want to say I had like 28-day care or something, where I had a mental health worker who was actually also a midwife. I had her as many times as I wanted to come and see me within the first 28 days of giving birth. Now, I was in hospital for a week, so it was about 3 weeks in the end. And she was absolutely incredible, because not only did she help me debrief some of my birth stuff, she also checked my scar for me. She helped me with pumping. She talked a lot about my mental health and some stuff that had happened with Raf in hospital that I didn't understand from my discharge notes. Like, there were just things I didn't get because I was so out of it after giving birth. And she basically kind of provided that for me, which was incredible. And I was lucky enough to be kept under the psychiatrist who'd originally seen me. She basically kept an eye on me for the first like 3 months, so I could check in with her whenever I wanted. So I feel incredibly lucky. I cannot fault within the system. The mental health care I got was out of this world. And I'm so aware that if my partner hadn't spoken up for me, it would have been a completely different game. And to the point where the care I got during postpartum, again, both from my family and my friends, but from the system I felt that really still didn't trust me. I didn't feel that as much postpartum. I think I'd proved that I could have a healthy baby. I felt there was a lot more respect, actually. The word respect isn't one that I use lightly. There was quite a lot of disrespect throughout my pregnancy, but postpartum, it was a different story. And I can't I can't fault it. I got really, really lucky. It makes me want to do the same for other women.
Oh. And just before we wrap up, if you had to advise other women who are in your shoes, who are about to walk a similar journey, a similar path to you,
Yeah.
what would you say to encourage them?
I'd say three things. I'd say you don't have to internalize the labels that the system will give you. It can be really hard not to, but actually trust yourself, trust your body, trust the medical professionals that you feel comfortable, safe with, respected by, for sure. Educate yourself, because ultimately there is no point in us talking about wanting to be trusted and being in our power and then just giving it away by not arming ourselves with education. So if you are high risk because of your BMI, like me, know what they're going to say to you. So nothing comes as a surprise. You have your witty retorts. If that's your defense mechanism, you can arm your partner to ask questions. You can push back. Why does my report say visibility not good? What didn't you see? What exactly of my baby could you not see that I need to maybe go and research or check on? And I'd say like the third one is like find your people. It's really hard within the system, like you've said. Sometimes you get incredibly lucky. I did get lucky. But there are people there, you just have to be a bit bullish to find them. So whether that is, a mental health midwife, whether that is someone at the gestational diabetes clinic that you feel a rapport with, find your people, ask questions, and like fundamentally remember you're not having this baby for all these people calling you something based on something arbitrary. You're having it for yourself, for your loved ones. That's the point of it. So yeah, dig in, be stubborn, and don't be too afraid to say go away to someone that doesn't respect your space, because you don't often get to do this. So
I second that. Absolutely. I think you've put it in a very tidy way. And yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your story. What's the next chapter for you, Gabriella?
well, I think because of my postpartum, well, actually, because of two things, because of the way I feel that your presence gave me back my trust and my power, and because of my postpartum experience and how blessed I was to be with my family, I am training to be a birth and postnatal
Wow.
doula later this year, which I am nervous about, but very, very excited. And I don't know where exactly it's going to take me. I think probably something in the mental health space. But really, I just want to be that like sister energy that I had. And I want to do my bit to make finding your people the norm, not the lucky exception.
Wherever that path takes you, I think you will do excellently. I think you will have no issues fighting for women and the families that you look after. Honestly, I think you will do really well. So congratulations with that. For those who want to connect with you or say thank you, or just who have just found your story really inspiring, where can they find you?
They can find me. So two places. If you want to just see random photos of my kid, which is my whole personality, I am on Instagram, but I've also just started a Substack called My Mother Says It's Normal, where I write about mental health, motherhood, and more about this crazy time of life.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, Gabriella. Thank you so much. It's just been nice to reflect with you on that experience. It was a really special experience. So thank you. And thank you for just being open with your journey.
Of course. Thank you. And I can't wait to see what you do next, because you're one of the special ones. You really are.
I appreciate you for listening or watching. If you'd like to get in touch or have a story you'd like to share, I'd love to hear from you. You can reach us through our website, houseofrosemary.com, or on Instagram, House of Rosemary, where we share posts on herbs, periods, and pregnancy. Take care.